Hello, everyone. God bless you and welcome to Monday Morning Motivation. This coming weekend, we will be celebrating Easter. It is one of the key events on the Christian calendar. And as I said in a previous devotion, it is not about bunnies and bonnets or eggs, nor is it a time for mourning for the Christian. But it is cause for celebration because of all that Christ has done to reconcile us to God. When we think of Easter, it reminds us of Passover, and we see the cross and Jesus crucified there for the sins of the world. His life on earth and his crucifixion aren't only stated in scriptures, but historical records from reputable authors of that day, like Jewish Josephus and Roman Tacitus, also affirm that Christ walked this earth and that he was crucified. The cross of Christ, therefore, is an irrefutable fact and not a made-up story. Christ is neither fake news nor some hoax. When we look at the cross of Jesus, we see that everyone is invited. All are welcome. There's much talk about inclusion nowadays, and what's interesting to note is that this active promotion of inclusion, that those who have a different view are excluded, ridiculed, or even maligned. But when we look at the cross of Jesus, that's not the case. His is the true inclusion, for whosoever will may come. Even those who don't disagree and those who may ridicule. It is for every single person that he came and died, and no one is excluded. You see, when Jesus hung on the cross in that day, there were those who were looking on. There were people who hated him and wanted him dead. There were those who laughed at him and mocked him, those who were unsure of who he was, and those who were his friends but kept their distance. But then there were a couple who drew close, who drew near. So to today, though he is not on the cross anymore, there's still all types of people looking at Jesus with the same kind of mindset as back then. But here's what I want you to understand about the work that God the Father did through Jesus then, and what he continues to do for all who would humbly come to him. Romans 8:32 asks us, "He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things?" Now, the answer is a foregone conclusion. It means that through Christ, God will surely and freely give us all things. This is the work he did on the cross and what he continues to do for all who will believe and live for him. The cross means that everything we may have need of, Christ has already provided. You see, the cross isn't doom and gloom to mankind, neither is it merely highlighting the cruelty of man to his fellow man. When we see the cross, we do not see defeat, but we see a glorious victory that stretches throughout all eternity. A victory that is shared with all who would humbly come to the foot of his cross and receive the gift of salvation that he so freely offers. The cross and Jesus' willing sacrifice there is God's utmost and highest demonstration of his immeasurable love and goodness to man. So, when Romans 8:32 states that through Christ God will freely give us all things, and then as proof uses the parallel of Jesus' death, it is highlighting that there's absolutely nothing he will withhold from you that's in keeping with his purpose and plan for your life. This isn't just a general statement, but it also applies to us individually and personally. In other words, you may be facing some specific challenge today that I may not be facing, and vice versa. But because of Jesus' work on the cross, the Father freely gives to each of us what we individually have need of, and He gives it not stingily, but liberally and joyfully. And here's the wonderful goodness and profound grace of God. He gives not because of anything you have done or not done. He gives not because you are worthy or unworthy of it, not because of where you live, not because of qualifications or lack thereof, not because of your failures or successes. None of these things matter to Him. He gives because of the cross of Christ. What a great salvation we have. Amen. If you've ever felt that you aren't good enough for God to save you, look at the cross of Jesus. If you've ever thought that salvation is for everyone else but you, look at the cross of Jesus and remember Romans 8:32. If the Father gave His Son for you, why would He withhold from you His loving kindness expressed through His gift of salvation? If Jesus willingly gave His life for you, why would He then turn around and condemn you? Be assured today that God has a future and a hope for you, and His desire is that you fully come into it. His gift has not and will never change. What Christ accomplished on Golgotha's hill is still the only way to the Father, because this was not only God's plan before time, but it is also the fullness of His incomprehensible love and it being so expressed and poured out for you. So as we enter Passover week, take to heart the words of this great song and be thankful for all that Jesus did for you. Thank you for the cross, Lord. Thank you for the price you paid. Bearing all my sin and shame, in love you came and gave amazing grace. Thank you for this love, Lord. Thank you for the nail-pierced hands. Wash me in your cleansing flow. Now all I know is your forgiveness and your embrace. Amen. This has been Monday Morning Motivation. Join me again next Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning for another devotional. Have a wonderful week.